The road to Ravenshollow wound like a ribbon through misty hills and dark, brooding woods. The air grew colder with every mile, and the scent of rain-soaked earth hung heavy in the air. Eleanor Gray tightened her scarf, gazing out the window of the old bus as the forest thickened. She had read about Ravenshollow in an old journal, a forgotten village tucked away in the English countryside, known for its ancient oak called the Whispering Tree. Local legends spoke of eerie voices that rose from its roots, of names whispered just before tragedy struck. To Eleanor, a historian and researcher of folklore, it was the perfect mystery. To the villagers, it was something better left alone. When the bus finally stopped near the cobblestone square, Eleanor stepped out and instantly felt it, that strange, heavy silence that seemed to hang in the air like fog. The houses were old and leaning, their windows shuttered. Only a few villagers walked about, their eyes downcast. She approached a baker sweeping his doorstep and smiled politely. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I might find the Whispering Tree?" The man froze mid-sweep. His eyes darted toward the forest edge, then quickly back to her. "You don't want to go there," he muttered. "Not after dark." Before Eleanor could ask more, he turned away, muttering a prayer under his breath. Puzzled but undeterred, she made her way to the Ravenshollow Inn, a two-story timber house with flickering lanterns by the door. The innkeeper, Martha Crane, was a kindly yet wary-looking woman in her 60s. When Eleanor mentioned her purpose, Martha's expression darkened. "Greater than, people have tried to study that tree before," she said quietly. "They didn't all come back the same. Some didn't come back at all." Eleanor gave a calm smile. "I don't believe in curses, Mrs. Crane. I believe in history, and history always leaves clues." Martha sighed. "Just promise me you won't go there after sunset." That night, in her small candlelit room, Eleanor reviewed her notes. The earliest record of the Whispering Tree dated back to the 1600s, around the same time the village had accused several women of witchcraft. Every few decades, the story resurfaced, a name whispered, a villager gone missing, and silence thereafter. The rational side of her mind told her it was mere superstition, fear passed down through generations. But another part of her, the part that had chased shadows across forgotten towns, felt something deeper. The wind howled outside, rattling the old window panes. She glanced through the glass, the forest loomed beyond, black and still. A faint shimmer of moonlight glowed through the trees, revealing the outline of something tall and twisted at its heart. The Whispering Tree. Grabbing her coat and lantern, Eleanor stepped out into the cold night. The air seemed to hum with a quiet tension as she followed the forest path. Her boots crunched on frost-laced leaves, and every rustle felt amplified in the silence. Finally, she reached a small clearing, and there it stood. The oak was colossal, its bark blackened as though struck by fire long ago. Its roots writhed across the earth like petrified serpents. Even the moonlight seemed afraid to touch it. Eleanor raised her lantern, its golden glow flickering against the tree's surface. Up close, she noticed strange markings carved into the bark, ancient runes, faded by time. She whispered softly, half to herself. "Greater than, you've seen centuries, haven't you?" The wind fell silent. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, a faint sound drifted through the stillness, so soft it might have been mistaken for the wind. A whisper. Low, hollow, and unmistakably human. "Greater than, Eleanor." The lantern trembled in her hand. She froze, heart pounding. She spun around, no one was there. The forest stood silent, lifeless. "Who's there?" she called, her voice echoing through the trees. No answer. Only that whisper again, threading through the darkness, closer this time. "Greater than, Eleanor Gray." Her knees weakened. She took a step back, tripping on a root and nearly dropping her lantern. The flame flickered, then steadied. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, her breath visible in the light. And then, as suddenly as it began, the whisper stopped. The forest returned to silence, but the name lingered in her mind like an echo that refused to fade. She turned and ran back toward the village, the sound of her hurried footsteps swallowed by the mist. Behind her, the tree stood still, ancient, waiting. And somewhere within its roots, something unseen whispered once more, too faint for her to hear. Morning light crept across the fog-shrouded hills of Ravenshollow, but the village still felt as though it hadn't truly awakened. The same uneasy stillness lingered in the air, the kind of silence that carried secrets. Eleanor Gray hadn't slept. The voice calling her name beneath the moon haunted every thought. She told herself it had been the wind, or perhaps her imagination twisted by fear. Yet, deep down, she knew what she'd heard. Determined to uncover the truth, Eleanor headed straight to the village library, a small stone building half hidden behind ivy and dust. Inside, the air smelled of old parchment and candle wax. Behind the front desk sat an elderly librarian, Mr. Alden, whose eyes widened slightly when Eleanor introduced herself. "I'm researching the whispering tree," she explained. His expression turned grim. "Then you're chasing ghosts, Miss Gray. We've enough of those already." Still, he led her to a locked cabinet in the back. After a long pause, he produced a brass key from a chain around his neck. "No one's asked for these in decades," he murmured, handing her a bundle of old ledgers and journals wrapped in cloth. "Take them, but tread carefully." Eleanor spent hours turning brittle pages, piecing together fragments of the past. The entries spanned centuries, strange accounts of whispers, missing villagers, and sudden deaths. But one journal, dated 1694, stood out. The name on its cover read, Thomas Wren. She began to read, the ink faded but still legible. "Greater than the voices rise again. Every night, the tree calls for the truth. We built our homes upon her grave, and now the roots remember what we tried to forget." Her pulse quickened. The words, her grave, echoed in her mind. That evening, Eleanor visited Father Benton, the local priest. The old man greeted her politely, but his hands trembled as she mentioned the tree. "Greater than, you shouldn't meddle with such things," he said, glancing toward the churchyard window. "That tree has witnessed sin and sorrow both. The land beneath it is cursed because of what was done there." Eleanor leaned forward. "What was done there?" The priest hesitated, then sighed heavily. 3 centuries ago, this village accused a woman named Marjorie Vale of witchcraft. They said she summoned storms, cursed livestock, and spoke to shadows. When her crops thrived while theirs failed, envy did the rest. He crossed himself before continuing. "She was condemned and burned beneath that oak. But before she died, she said something none dared write down until years later. I will speak through the roots of the earth until the guilty are named." Eleanor shivered. "You mean the whispers?" He nodded. "Every few decades, someone claims to hear the tree. And always, within days, someone dies. The villagers say it's Marjorie's curse, that she calls out until her injustice is righted." Eleanor stood, her voice steady but her heart racing. "Then it's not a curse. It's history, and she wants her story told." That night, despite the warnings, Eleanor returned to the forest. The mist clung to the air, thick and silver, wrapping the trees like shrouds. The oak loomed ahead, silent, waiting. She set her lantern down and began to record. "This is Eleanor Gray," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Day 2 of investigation. I believe the whispers might be linked to Marjorie Vale's death. If any spirit remains, I mean no harm. I only seek the truth." For a long moment, there was nothing but the rustle of leaves. Then came the voice again, faint but clearer than before. "Greater than, help me." Eleanor's breath hitched. The voice was feminine, strained, filled with pain. "Greater than, beneath, the roots." Her eyes darted to the ground. The soil seemed to pulse faintly under the lantern light. She knelt, brushing away the damp leaves, her fingers trembling. At first, she thought it was just an old branch, pale and curved. But as she brushed away more dirt, her stomach turned cold. It wasn't wood. It was bone. Human bone. She stumbled back, gasping, her heart hammering in her chest. The forest seemed to darken, the air thick with a heavy presence. "Greater than, Eleanor." The whisper again, closer now, almost behind her. She turned, nothing. Only shadows. Panicked, she grabbed her lantern and fled, branches tearing at her sleeves. The whispers followed her until she burst back onto the cobblestone path, the village lights flickering faintly in the distance. At the inn, she slammed the door behind her. Martha rushed from the kitchen, alarmed by her pale face and shaking hands. "What happened, child?" Eleanor tried to speak but could only whisper, "There's something buried there, bones, and it spoke to me." Martha's face drained of color. She didn't question, didn't laugh, only muttered under her breath. "Greater than, it's starting again." Eleanor sat by the fire, clutching her lantern. The faint scent of earth still clung to her hands. She knew then, she had uncovered something far deeper than superstition. The tree wasn't cursed. It was remembering. And whatever lay beneath its roots wanted to be found. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. The whispers replayed endlessly in her mind, "Help me, beneath the roots." At dawn, she walked through Ravenshollow with tired eyes, watching villagers glance away as she passed. Word had spread fast. She could feel it in their silence, in the way they pulled their children indoors. The only person who didn't avoid her was Martha Crane, the innkeeper. Martha placed a cup of tea before her and sat across the table, her expression heavy with something Eleanor couldn't quite read. "Greater than, you've stirred something old, my dear," Martha said quietly. "Something that never really slept." Eleanor looked up sharply. "You knew the stories were true." Martha hesitated, then nodded. "My grandmother told me once, the whispers aren't random. They call to certain people. The tree remembers bloodlines, not names." Eleanor frowned. "Bloodlines." Martha's voice trembled. "Marjorie Vale, the woman burned under that tree, she was my ancestor." The words struck like a thunderclap. "Your ancestor?" "Yes," Martha whispered. "And yours too." Eleanor froze. "Mine." Martha nodded slowly. "The Gray family came from the Vales, distant, generations apart. The curse doesn't call strangers, Eleanor. It calls home its own." The air seemed to leave the room. Suddenly, the whispers made sense. The voice calling her name wasn't trying to harm her. It was reaching out to her. That night, despite her exhaustion and fear, Eleanor returned to the forest once more. She followed the same path, the fog curling like smoke around her feet. The moon was nearly full, spilling silver light through the branches. When she reached the clearing, the whispering tree stood like a monument of shadow and sorrow. She placed her palm on its bark, and the cold bit through her skin. "Greater than, Marjorie," she whispered softly. "I know who you are. I know what they did to you." The forest exhaled. A sudden gust of wind swirled leaves into the air, and the whispers rose again, louder this time, desperate, mournful. "Greater than, truth, hidden, beneath." Eleanor dropped to her knees, digging at the earth with her bare hands. The soil was soft, damp, and strangely warm. After a few minutes, her fingers struck something hard. She cleared the dirt, revealing the corner of a wooden box, wrapped tightly in roots as if the earth itself had tried to protect it. With a trembling effort, she pulled it free. The lid creaked open to reveal a stack of letters, brittle and yellowed with age. The wax seals bore the emblem of Ravenshallow's council, the same men who had condemned Marjorie Vale. By lantern light, Eleanor began to read. Each letter was a confession. "Greater than, we accused her to save ourselves. The harvest failed because of our greed. We took her land, her name, her life." Her hands shook. The final letter was unsigned, but its words froze her blood. "Greater than, let her curse be my punishment. The whispers will haunt this place until the truth is spoken aloud." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. She understood now, the whispers weren't vengeance. They were a plea for justice. Marjorie hadn't cursed the village, she had cursed the lie that had buried her. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her knees. The lantern flickered violently. Roots shifted, cracking through the soil, curling around the edges of the box as if the tree itself were alive. Eleanor backed away, clutching the letters to her chest. The whispers rose into a single, heart-wrenching cry, not of anger, but of release. Then, silence. The forest stilled. The wind died. For the first time, the tree no longer whispered. When Eleanor opened her eyes, dawnlight was spilling through the branches. She was lying at the base of the oak, the box beside her. Birds sang faintly, something she hadn't heard near the tree before. Villagers found her that morning, still clutching the letters. They gathered around as she read them aloud in the village square, her voice steady and clear. Each word broke the centuries of silence. Each truth washed away a little more of the fear that had gripped Ravenshollow for generations. When she finished, Martha placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. Eleanor looked toward the forest. For the first time, the whispering tree stood peacefully, its branches swaying gently in the morning breeze. The curse had never been about death, it had been about memory. About a woman who refused to be forgotten. Later that day, Eleanor buried the letters beneath the oak once more, wrapped carefully in linen. She whispered, "Greater than, rest now, Marjorie. The truth has been told." The wind stirred softly, brushing her cheek like a sigh of gratitude. That night, the villagers said the forest felt lighter. The fog had lifted, and moonlight shone freely through the branches. The tree no longer whispered names, only a soft, rhythmic hum, like a heartbeat in the wind. And sometimes, when the night is very still, travelers claim they hear a faint voice, not in sorrow, but in peace, saying,